Well, good afternoon. I'm David Freimiller. Thank you for listening today to Community Spotlight. Special guest today, be speaking for the next few minutes with the author of The Flip, a brand new book. Sidney Potter is with me today. Sidney, good to have you today.
David Freimiller, thanks for your time. Appreciate it, Doug.
Hey, where did we find you today? Where are you right now?
Well, right now I'm in Pasadena, California, which is a wonderful city. We all know it for the Rose Parade, so I'm just enjoying myself this good morning with a cup of hot Java.
Hey, sounds great. I wish I was with you. Hey, give us a little bit about your background. Your dad was in real estate and kind of got you started. You learned some ropes from him and got into other things. But give us some of your professional background.
Yeah, absolutely. My father, licensed in '68. He's a sociology professor. Used to sell commercial real estate in South Central Los Angeles, so I used to tag along with my little brothers and sisters, and we'd hang up signs. It was a great experience. I got in the business shortly after college, about 20 years ago, eventually selling commercial properties for a national brokerage in Southern California. And about 10 years ago, right when about the boom started to boom, before it went bust, started buying tract homes in Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Southern California. Made a lot of money, but made a few mistakes, and that's where it went boom. So that's where I'm at right now, and wrote a book about it, actually.
Yeah, now tell us exactly what that is. What is a flip, to flip a house?
Sure. Generally speaking, they're either new tract homes, and that's what this book is about, versus REOs, real estate-owned properties, resale homes. And there's just a certain methodology on placing very small deposits, anywhere from $500 to $1,500, $2,000. These are brand new homes, very affordable, at the $60,000, $70,000 up to the $400,000 level, and riding an appreciation wave. We don't see it nowadays like we used to see it, but it's just a much more sanitized way of investing. You don't get a lot of nicks and bumps on deals that you see on some of the resales today.
And I like the way you described the loan process. I never really thought of it before. You get a construction loan,
Yep.
and you actually don't start paying that loan until the home is completed. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's like taking out options with the benefit of whether or not it's going to be a property that's closable. So in essence, what you're doing is really minimizing the downside, and that's the beauty of it. It's the hard part of it as well. Some people can't stomach walking away from either deposit of $500 to $1,500. That's sometimes considered the cost of doing business, but that's not always the case. And very often those monies may be refundable, but if they're not, that's simply the price that you've paid in order to potentially ride a huge appreciation wave.
Sidney, you talked about the different phases of a development, phase 1, 2, 3, 4. What exactly are those?
Sure. Well, when we're speaking from the developer's perspective, there may be a master plan community, either 10 homes or 1,000 homes. They've got different phases in it. Typically on the phase 1, 2, 3, the earlier phases are likened to almost innings in a ball game, if you will, in that it's better to get in the earlier stage because usually the prices are priced much more attractively. So that's why it's important to do your research, know what's being developed out there, and to see whether or not it's worth making a stake in.
You talked about the different areas that are hot spots, and you dealt with California. The triangle, was it the green triangle that you talked about?
Yeah, I kind of fashioned that myself because it's a triangular disposition between Las Vegas, Nevada, Phoenix, Arizona, and Riverside, California, which is about 60 miles east of Los Angeles. And if you look at it from a map, bird's eye view, it forms a triangle. So I call that the green triangle because it was just such a great appreciation area during the first 6-7 years of the past decade.
And you give some good websites of where we can kind of track where they are, but is it good to deal with an area close to you, or can you do that out of state? How does that work?
I think that's the beauty of it. I mean, we've got that. We'll talk about Texas. We've got the Southwest commercial that says, "You are now free to roam the country or the cabin." The great thing about real estate, you can do it from your armchair. It is best to go out to kick some tires. When it comes to new tract housing, there's lots of websites out there like Builder Online or some of the newhomesource.com. Or forecast.com is a good one where it shows you the research. These are economists that do it for the builders, and they parlay that information out to. So you can get really a good idea of what's going out there and areas to invest, either locally, and there's a couple places in Texas, doggone it, maybe even Corpus Christi, somewhat, but lots of areas to invest in terms of upside.
Sidney, one thing I read the other day in your book, that was a great idea, is to have, like when you get close to closing, everything looks like it's going great, but you suggest having a couple sources of loans there, like in case one just changes their rate last minute or something happens to the 11th hour.
Yeah.
Talk about that a moment.
And yeah, David, thanks. Those are all real life things that happen to investors, and they certainly happen to me, and I write about it. Listen, don't real estate's a great way to build up confidence. I mean, not that personally speaking that I need it, but for those that are a bit docile, you want to get a little bit mean, but not in a bad way. Have a couple of real estate brokers, mortgage brokers, and I say a word or two about those fellas, but their objective is to make as much money as they can on you, typically, okay? So I really recommend it's prudent to have a couple of mortgage brokers price out a piece of property, even to the point where they're drafting up loan documents. And I know that sounds sick, but they may not be able to come through on their loan that they're serving up to you, and you may be in a very uncomfortable position of not being able to close on a piece of property. So it's always good to have a backup. Okay, and to a certain extent, it's not personal, it's business, and that's happened to me where I've been at the closing table a day or two before, and suddenly the lender went AWOL, MIA. They decided to change their underwriting guidelines, so it's always prudent to have a plan A, B, and C, or B and C, rather.
Yeah, I think it's just a good strategy. I'm talking today with Sidney Potter. Sidney Potter with me about The Flip, a brand new book, and I am such a novice real estate guy. Just have a couple of rent houses, but this book reads so easy. And there's such good advice in it. So appreciate you writing that way, Sidney.
Yeah.
We explained a lot of things. I want to talk again. You're talking about your dad. I was reading last night in your book about your dad and how he diversified. I thought that was great. He did commercial real estate, but yet he also did loans. Could you talk about that and just that strategy?
Absolutely. And he used to do probably the red hair cousin of real estate is property management, and he did a bit of that. And it's best to have humility, and I saw that as a child, where commercial real estate was his core, but over a 25 to 30 year period, there's some dips in there, ebbs and webs, and he had to diversify and do some loans because that's what his clients wanted, and that was a need, almost a need-based analysis. And he did property management as well, which plays even a smaller percentage in terms of profit, especially if you're doing it on a small scale. So it pays to have a degree of diversity, although you certainly want a bit of a core. And, there's nothing wrong to a certain extent being a jacks of all trades. When we look at the big accounting companies, Deloitte & Touche, Ernst & Young, they have diversified accountants that just aren't one-trick ponies. A guy may specialize in 10Ks for corporate real estate returns, but may also do some tax consulting on franchise development. So there's no shame in that, and certainly there should be no shame in real estate where you've got to belly up to the bar and do what you need to do to survive. And that it's a character-building experience that I saw and my brother saw, and one that I tried to emulate. And I emulated a bit, but that's, when we talk about some miscues, I talk about that in The Flip. It may have been better to diversify a little bit for myself. And I did, to a certain extent. So I started to buy condo conversions at the end when I saw the end coming, the end of days, if you will, in terms of the tract housing boom. But it was almost a day late, dollar short. But at least you can do, on a Monday morning quarterback analysis, know what your mistakes were and know what your non-mistakes were.
Sidney, you give some good advice about using a national home builder when you get the tract home, you start building. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I suppose it's best analogous to, is it better to go on a new parking lot or an old used car parking lot? And listen, we all need new cars. We have pre-owned Porsches and Mercedes, but even lesser than that. I try to make the point that it's better, at least from an investor perspective, in terms of warranties, warrantability on a home, to go with a national builder. You've got great local builders as well, and they have probably very strong profiles. But you want to make certain that if something does go wrong with the vehicle, or rather the house, that there's a fallback plan and that you're not left holding the goods in terms of a very expensive fix-up problem. It could be a foundation, could be roofing. You never know. So that's once again one of the attractive aspects of getting a brand new, spanking new home, that new car smell, versus getting an older home, which may have some issues with it, such as clean title and just a laundry list of other issues. So that's why I have an attraction, at least personally, and other investors out there, to go for those new tract homes, because it's just less headaches and it's more sanitized.
That's right. And as you mentioned, there are some good local builders. You just want to make sure they have a service department, that you can reach them after the sale, that they don't. You talked about the Canadian company that just packed up and left after the project. I read that last night.
Our good Canadian friends to the north, They well, they're wily little fellas, them, but they literally left town. And Well, yeah, you want to make sure that there's actually an address, physical address, brick and mortar for the actual warranty company that's going to insure your brick and mortar home. Just that it's not web-based, that there's actually a live person, and that's very important. Do your research. You can cross-verify. There's so many ways to cross-verify the existence and the viability of certain departments within an organization. Just too numerous to mention right now, but it's very important. I mean, real estate can be good and bad. You just don't want to make sure you make the missteps. So make sure they're there literally on the map. That's what I'm saying.
Talking today with Sidney Potter about The Flip, brand new book that he just released. I wish we could keep going. I know you need to go, but
yeah.
I just jotted down as we leave, talk about options. I know you can probably get carried away with adding all these options to a house that you're building, but you said to keep that under control, don't you?
Sure. Very quickly. This is what was one of my first mistakes, I think 2002. I walked into a KB home studio where you buy options in it, writing a $35,000 check and in 8 hours. Okay, I divided by, it was actually 16 hours, like $400 an hour, I figured, if not more. Options are good. Be very prudent. Don't go overboard. Keep in mind that less is usually more, and you cut on your return if you spend too much, but there is a way to gauge options where it adds value as opposed to taking away from your pocketbook.
We didn't even talk about the profit, but you say $10,000 is on the low side. You can do really well on these, can't you?
Oh, absolutely, David Miller. Excuse me, Mr. Fry Miller.
That's fine.
I'm sorry, but yeah, God bless you. Bet you can do very well. You bet.
Great, Sidney. Thanks for your time. Give us real quick, like where we can get your book, your website. How can we reach you?
Absolutely, Mr. Fry Miller. It is at theflip.tv, just like television, theflip.tv, and you'll find everything you need. Okay.
Hey, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it. You've taught us a lot.
Okay, God bless.
All right, you too. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.